today, Commissioner Blocker. I really appreciate seeing you today and learning more about Firewatch.
Well, Ann, thank you so much for inviting me. I've been looking forward to this. I appreciate the opportunity to talk to you about a subject that I feel very passionate about.
I do as well. My grandfather served in World War II and was the recipient of the Bronze Star and the Purple Heart, and I dearly wish an organization of this kind had been available to him and many other veterans who would have surely benefited from the support. Before we dive into the questions, I was hoping you might share a little bit about who you are as well as your military background.
Sure, no, absolutely. Well, I think the most important thing is I'm a father to two amazing children and a husband to my wife, Lauren. I come from a big military family, so I have four brothers who are all combat veterans, and they served in the Army, the Marine Corps, and all four are still serving. I've had experience in the military as well. I'm a member of the Army National Guard here in Florida, which is a great pleasure to serve our community here. I'm a combat veteran. I've led troops in combat in Iraq, and I've also had the opportunity to be a judge advocate for the Air Force. So I've had a very diverse military experience, and it's still ongoing. I'm coming up on 20 years now, and it's still going.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for your service. And I hope that today you'll be able to share with us anything that you want about Firewatch. So please tell me and our viewers more about Firewatch.
Well, I think in a nutshell, Firewatch is a regional effort to address veteran suicides. We lose approximately 20 to 22 veterans per year. And this impacts families across our community, across demographics, across racial and gender lines, and the veteran community right now is the most ravaged by suicide. And I think there are a couple of different factors that come into play with that. Firewatch is an opportunity for local communities to come together to address that. The term Firewatch actually comes from, it's a Marine Corps term where you stand watch while others are the most vulnerable, while they're sleeping, while they're in danger. And I think that's a powerful term. I think it really captures what we're trying to accomplish is partner people in the community with veterans who are vulnerable and give them the opportunity to have that comfort and have someone stand watch for them. We have hundreds of volunteers who are standing watch in Nassau County, Duval County, Clay County, Baker County, and here in St. Johns County. And we're very proud of that effort.
Absolutely, and I love that Firewatch, from what I've learned about it, is veterans supporting veterans, because who better than a fellow veteran to understand that experience and be someone that a struggling veteran might feel more comfortable reaching out to. And so I guess my next question would be, how did you personally decide to become involved with Firewatch?
Well, I think it's a great question. A dear friend of mine who's a councilman in Jacksonville, Rory Diamond. Rory is the CEO of K9 for Warriors, and I can't think of any organization that's done more to help veterans with suicide. They've literally had hundreds of veterans come through that organization with service dogs, and they've had 1 out of 1,000 suicides. So clearly they're doing something right. Councilman Diamond, Rory, a good friend, he called me up one day and said, listen, I feel that we need to do more to help veterans in our community in Duval County, St. Johns County, Clay County, Nassau, Baker County. So we got together a group of local officials, and we all decided from different counties and decided that we wanted to create the Firewatch, an opportunity to really match people that want to be involved in the mental health aspect of this. One of the challenges with the military is when you leave the military, you leave that force support and that structure behind. There are different groups in the community that help with that, but really an overreaching organization to bring everyone together sometimes is lacking. Veteran suicide impacts so many families. My grandfather was a World War I veteran, not World War II, World War I. He had my father very late in life, who had me very late in life, but my grandfather committed suicide. He was a veteran who took his own life. And that impact has transcended generations. It impacted my father on his deathbed. He was speaking about it. That certainly has impacted me. So that one effect has impacted 3 generations of people in the military. My father was also a veteran and served. So this impacts families. I've had 2 soldiers that I serve with that have taken their own life, and it's a traumatic experience. You have mothers that have left their children, you have fathers that have left their children, you have parents that have lost a child to this, and you have spouses that have lost their loved ones. So this impacts everybody. So I got involved really at the prompting of Rory Diamond, because I felt like this was important for us to stand up and try to help solve this in a regional effort.
Absolutely, and I'm so sorry for your loss. Suicide does affect everybody that person knows, and even others who may be struggling. And mental health has, unfortunately, such a stigma that makes it hard to reach out and talk about what you might be struggling with. As a civilian myself, I imagine that the military provides a great deal of structure and, as you said, a support network that isn't necessarily in place when that veteran comes home. So an organization like Firewatch gives an opportunity to replicate that environment with people who understand and that you have a shorthand with. You don't have to try and explain it to someone who might not understand. You've got someone you can talk to who gets it, who might be experiencing some of those same issues, and then it becomes veterans helping veterans. So I think that's a wonderful thing that such an organization is in place. You mentioned some of the reasons that an organization of this kind is needed. Are there any other reasons that you can think of that this organization is so vital to perhaps the veterans who are already involved in Firewatch?
Yeah, I do. When you think about it, when you have people generally that go into the military, they're generally between the ages of about 18 and 25. So that's a very formative experience to go into that. And we've had ongoing wars in Afghanistan, Iraq, dating back to the Vietnam War and the Gulf War. You've had really generations that have been involved in these wars. So you have young men and women, really their most formative years that are being thrust into very unpleasant, difficult, challenging, terrible situations. As long as they stay in the military, for the most part, there are support structures in place. Once they leave, it becomes very challenging. I think building that team and that effort outside the military is very important, building that structure. It's important for veterans to help veterans, but also we need civilians who have no affiliation with the military to get involved. My wife has never been in the military, but she has a strong grasp for mental health, the challenges, and a compassion to be able to talk to someone, help them work through it. There's so many people in our community that have those skills and those experiences where they can really be part of the team, stand watch, if you will, be part of the Firewatch and really help. And I think that's important. When we go to war, it's not just one group of people doing it. The whole community goes to war. When you look at World War II, you had everyone. You had farmers that stayed behind that grew the crops. You had engineers that were continuing to run the trains. You had men and women that were working in the factories. None of those individuals participated directly in combat overseas, but they were a critical part of the effort in winning that war. And we've seen that in every war since then and prior to that. So I say that really to illustrate that civilians have a critical role to play in helping military veterans deal with the mental health challenges that come from this experience. Having an 18-year-old over the 25 and those older going into these combat environments and stress environments, and then they get out of the military. There's no real structure, there's no real ability to address it. There's a taboo about discussing it, even though that's being challenged and overcome. It's difficult. It's difficult for people to talk about these things. We build individuals up into warriors and we ask them to talk about something that's very vulnerable. That's a challenge, but it's something that I feel that current existing members of the military community can get involved. People that are out of the military can get involved, and those that have never worn the uniform can get involved, and they're just as important.
I'm so glad to hear that, because I think one of the struggles for families when a veteran comes home from war is you want to support that person, you want to love that person, you want to ease that person's pain, and sometimes you just don't know quite how to reach them. And as you talked about it, I remember that with my grandfather, he really never talked about his service. And when I asked my dad about it after my grandfather's funeral a few years ago, he only knew certain pieces of his service. I was lucky enough that a few days before he passed of a heart attack that he was still every bit as clear-headed and self-sufficient, and I got a chance to thank him for his service. But I imagine, like I said, that it may be difficult for civilians to truly know how to reach out and help. But I'm so glad to hear that Firewatch offers that opportunity for civilians like myself or others who really care about this movement and want to support veterans who come back from war.
Well, the story you just told is so illustrative. So many stories that tell where people have a grandfather, an uncle, or a grandmother that went through a terrible experience of war, and they don't talk about it. It's difficult. It's difficult for them to revisit the pain associated with that. That's why I think it's so important for people in our community who have never worn the uniform to step forward, because talking about those experiences, using their own unique experiences to talk and help people work through that. Sometimes just listening is important. and just absorbing that. And I think the story you share from your family is very illustrative of what many, many people probably in the community feel.
And it's interesting how, as a civilian, I could be very proud of him being awarded the Purple Heart and the Bronze Star, but I imagine from his perspective, it's probably a painful thing to remember, because to have gotten those acknowledgments meant that something really dramatic and scary and intense happened as a result, something that you wouldn't want to revisit. Like you said, what also struck me about what you were sharing about Firewatch and about supporting veterans in their mental health is, as they come back from active duty and try to reintegrate into society, you can't go back. You can't go back to the person you once were. You have to be this new person. And there's not necessarily a structure in place that allows you to do that. And I love that Firewatch addresses mental health, because as I said, there is a stigma. I myself personally have struggled with mental health, as have some of my relatives who struggle with depression. And so to know that there's an organization out there that is looking to eradicate that taboo, eradicate that stigma, and really reach out to people and say it's okay to not be okay. And it's okay to reach out to somebody else. And I love the term that they're being watched over, because sometimes what you need is you find yourself in a mental health crisis and you just need to know that there's somebody you can reach out to. Someone you've already kind of developed a relationship with, you have a shorthand, you don't have to try to explain yourself, you don't have to try to justify how you feel, you can just pick up the phone and call that person and say, I'm struggling, and know that there's help.
I think that's so true, and I think you've hit on, it's a powerful term, standing watch, and that can be anybody. You have so many children that have never experienced the military, that have mental health challenges. I mean, our day and age, I think you're seeing more of that, and I think people are grappling with, we have so many great things in our society, so many technological advances, so many improvements in science, but one of the things that we still grapple with is, how do you deal with someone that's struggling with a severe mental health issue? How do we remove the stigma of that, and how do we help them? How do we talk them through that? How do we show them the support that they need? That's something that we really wrestle with, apart from the veteran suicide part of it. So I think you've really hit on some key points that are important.
I know that having struggled with depression the last few years, there's that feeling of you don't want to feel weak, you don't want to feel broken, you don't want to feel any of those terms that people sometimes apply to mental health. And I can only imagine that it's that much more extreme a feeling with someone who's served, because that seems like the antithesis of going off to war. War is portrayed as you're so brave and you're so strong, and to come back and feel like in some way you're admitting that you're not, that's a real challenge. So again, I really appreciate what Firewatch is out there and is doing, and is inviting both veterans who can support other veterans, and struggling veterans, and civilians like myself to become involved, and how much that must help the families, because that takes the relief off of the spouse and off of the children to feel like their mom or dad or aunt or uncle or grandfather or grandmother is getting the support that they so richly deserve, and gets a chance to live their life again the way that they want to.
Well, I think that's so true. Not all wounds of war are visible. Not everyone that's been impacted by war or these experiences, has a visible scar. Sometimes they're internal, and sometimes you have to get inside and help them and show them that love and compassion. I think that those are the key words: is love and compassion, and also camaraderie. The camaraderie. People, when they're grouped together and feel they're part of a team, they want to work for the team. They want to work for everyone involved. They want to be a part of something bigger and a higher purpose. And what greater calling than to help those that are in need?
Absolutely. And especially allowing yourself to become vulnerable enough to open up about how you're feeling, and that trust. And I imagine that speaking to either other veterans who can relate, or to people who very much have a great passion for helping veterans, allows for that vulnerability to be possible, to let out those feelings. And my hope is that since this is an organization the only one of its kind in the nation, that other communities here in Florida and in other states will consider having an organization of this kind that is supportive of veterans and is trying to prevent veteran suicide. Has there been any talk about having other chapters of this organization in Florida or expanding its reach?
Yes, absolutely. I think it's still fairly new, and I think the COVID pandemic probably, people stopped gathering in groups, so that put somewhat of a damper on this. It's still fairly young. What I've heard from a number of other counties and local officials in the state of Florida that have interest in it because they're all dealing with it. Where I come from originally, I was born and raised in Marion County in Ocala. They have a great Veterans Council, a large number of veterans down there. They're struggling with the same issues. They're dealing with some of the challenges as well. And so having that overreaching ability to address this is important and critical. So to answer your question, yes, there is growing interest. A problem like this is difficult to tackle, and it has to start with bringing people together that want to solve the problem so things aren't so dispersed. And I think that's really what Firewatch does. If someone asks me in a nutshell, where is the benefit of a Firewatch? You need people in the community that can stand watch and be part of the fight. And this is a unique opportunity to equip people and prepare them for this fight.
Absolutely, and acknowledge that there is a fight,
Absolutely.
that it's a real thing, that it's not just you just come home from war and why can't you just reintegrate into society, that's a process and it's a struggle, and there is support needed, and that mental health struggles are real. So I'm so glad to hear that it's expanding its reach and that people are catching on and saying, hey, this is something really important, and this is something that we can do. We can reach out to our community and find ways to help veterans. So I'm really glad to hear that Firewatch may go beyond St. Johns County, but that's certainly really special to St. Johns County, especially celebrating our 200th anniversary this year. We are home to the nation's oldest city, which has a long military history.
Absolutely.
And we are the only county in the entire nation that has an organization that honors that long military history by providing support and preventing veteran suicide. So I think that's
so true, and I think you bring up a good point about the military history. The oldest military garrison, St. Augustine, was a military garrison town, and some of the early conflicts were here in the St. Augustine area. And just as the state of Florida grew from St. Johns County, and the military traditions grew from St. Augustine and St. Johns County, our hope is that you'll see a growing of this effort coming from St. Johns County in this region, so we can touch other parts of the state and also the country. And I can't think of anything more fitting. Our National Guard headquarters is still here, our militia is still here in St. Johns County. This is the home to a great military tradition, and we want to make it a home to a great group of problem solvers who can stand watch and help our struggling veterans and all those that have mental health challenges.
And I love that St. Johns County is a place where a lot of people decide to retire because it's such a beautiful and interesting place to live. So by having Firewatch here, you're not just helping current veterans, you're also helping veterans who've retired here and are able to finally get the support and the recognition that perhaps in the time that they served wasn't available, that it really wasn't talked about. It was almost frowned upon to open up about such things or admit that there was a struggle. So I love that you're going to be able to reach both ends of the spectrum in terms of military service. And you're so right about the pandemic. It has really isolated a lot of people. And from what I've read in various articles, unfortunately the rate of veteran suicide has spiked a little bit here in the pandemic, but I know that Firewatch is an innovative organization and is always thinking of ways of how you can electronically connect with people and call them and still provide that opportunity.
Well, there are many ways to communicate, and that's important. And for those that are listening that have interest, if you go to www.thefirewatch.org, I think you'll see some great information on how to get involved in that. And you're right, there's so many different ways to communicate and be a part of that struggle and to stand up in that fight, stand watch.
Absolutely, and I love that you brought up about getting involved. So for those who are watching who are veterans like yourself, who want to support veterans, or civilians like me, who think it's a great cause to get behind and want to reach out and help, or even struggling veterans themselves or those who love struggling veterans, how do these different groups of people get involved in Firewatch?
Well, I think there are many different ways. You can go onto the website as one, which is the Firewatch. Also, if you have an iPhone or a smartphone, there's actually an app that you can get on your phone that will connect you with a veteran that needs help. There's so many different ways to get involved in this, and I have it right on my phone. I have the Firewatch on there. I can volunteer. I can get involved if there's a veteran that's struggling. Because the key is, someone picks up the phone, calls, and says, "Look, I'm struggling. I need help." Is to connect them with someone. So I encourage everyone to go online, pull out your smartphone, look for the Firewatch as an app, get it uploaded on your phone, and join the fight, stand on the watch.
I love that you make it so incredibly easy to make that connection. You've got an app, you've got a website. Someone doesn't have to justify why they're calling. There's not a cost. They can just get the help that they need. So you've broken down all these different barriers that sometimes, especially when you're struggling with mental health, seem like they crop up in front of you. Reasons maybe not to reach out, to silence yourself. And you've paved the way for someone to easily become involved, which is such a great thing. As far as like the time commitment, what should someone who's volunteering or what should someone who is being supported expect?
Well, I think as far as the volunteers, I think it's really based on what they're able to give. Some people are able to give a day, once a month. Some people are able to give more time, but really just kind of finding what works for them. Is very adaptable to the person, the individual. As far as a veteran that needs help and assistance, we want to match them with people. Their expectation should be that we want to find someone we can partner them with that can stay and watch with them when they're struggling, when they're having a bad day, when they're struggling with, do I want to make that terrible decision of not staying here anymore, not living this life? We want them to feel that there are people out there that care about them, that we can match them with, that will take that phone call, that will listen to them, and also hold them accountable so they don't harm themselves and their loved ones. When someone takes their life, they're not just impacting themselves. As we discussed earlier, you're impacting generations of individuals. It's important for people to understand that this is a mental health problem. People have a sickness, just like the flu, just like some other illnesses. They need help, professional help, and also people that can be there for you. Just like you need someone to take you to the doctor and get your medicine. You need people that can be there for you, that are not doctors, that can listen, that can understand and try to help.
Absolutely, because having struggled with depression myself, I know that one of the things that depression does is it silences you, it shuts you down, it isolates you. That's how it thrives, that's how it lives. So the more outlets that you have, the more people you have that are reminding you you're worthwhile, you deserve to be here, we need you here, and to know that you have that quick and easy connection to touch base with someone when you're struggling, I think is so important. Right now, I know a lot of doctors, for example, are doing telehealth appointments, which can be interesting. I do telehealth appointments with my counselor, but I had a relationship established with her before the pandemic. So to start that off as your first thing would be challenging. So to know that you're going to connect with someone who has a passion specifically for veterans, and in the instance of you and other veterans like you, have that shorthand to that experience. That just makes it so much easier to feel like you can just connect right away and know that there's someone out there looking out for you. And as you said, making you accountable, making you ask yourself, hey, is this really what you want to do? Is this something that we can talk about, something that we can work through? And I love that Firewatch and that you don't minimize what mental health is, that it is the same as going to the doctor because you have a broken arm. You're not going to lay in your bed with a broken arm and just say, well, my arm's broken, I guess I'll just see if it happens to heal.
Right.
You would go to the doctor. You wouldn't think twice about that. But for some reason with mental health and it being in your head and it being brain chemistry, a real thing, that for some reason that's different. So I like that Firewatch is breaking that stigma. And you've touched on the benefits that struggling veterans have with going and becoming a part of Firewatch and linking up with someone and having someone watch over them. Are there any other benefits that you want to share that veterans who are struggling could gain from being a part of Firewatch?
Well, absolutely, because I think one of the challenges to going through mental health and veteran suicide is understanding that you're part of the helping someone else as well. If you're struggling with suicidal thoughts, let's get you to a place where you can help the next person. So I think there's some therapy in that and some problem solving where it's not just you, you have teammates out there. On a battlefield, people get wounded, get injured, but you're in the same foxhole. So I think part of the therapy and the help is getting those same veterans that struggle with veteran suicide, getting them involved in helping others that are struggling with the same issues. And sometimes that can have a dramatic impact and improvement.
Is there anything else that you'd like to share with a struggling veteran who may be watching, or a family of a struggling veteran, about Firewatch and why it might matter to you?
Absolutely. You're not alone. If you're struggling with this and you're having a difficult time, you're feeling that there's no answers, there's no path forward, you're not alone. There are people out there that care about you. There are people out there that want you to be safe. There are people out there that appreciate you, and you're valuable to them. And we're going to help you. We're going to come together, and we're going to jump in that foxhole with you, and we're going to take care of you. But you matter. And going forward, we're going to be there to help you. That's what I want those veterans to understand.
Absolutely, and I'm glad that you're so straightforward about it, and so that they can hear that voice resonating to them and reach out to the website or download the app. I also would want veterans to know that the St. Johns County Library System has a great deal of books designed to support veterans. We just recently picked up a book about preventing veteran suicide specifically. It was just published at the end of 2020, which is very timely. We also have books about how veterans can get jobs when they return, how they can reintegrate. After this presentation, I'll be providing a list of those books. There are many more books in our library system. The ones I selected are ones that have been published in 2020 and 2021. So for all the veterans out there, if you don't already have your St. Johns County Library card, please come to the library and get a card and connect with these resources, some of which are downloadable ebooks that you can download right to your tablet.
So exciting.
Yes, it's very exciting. I'm glad that we can do our part to support veterans, as particularly local community citizens. Is there anything else that you want to share today before we wrap up?
No, I just want to thank you for the time. Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And thank you for the pleasant conversation. Thank you for your ongoing service to our community and also your family's historic service to our country. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you giving me your time today and for your service and being so dedicated both to mental health and to struggling veterans. And I hope those that are watching that are struggling, or families that love someone who is struggling, will reach out and get the help and support they so richly deserve.
Thank you.